Hi, thank you for tuning into my channel. In this playlist, I will be sharing podcasts on a regular basis that will let you experience the Feldenkrais Method via awareness through movement lessons. In the lessons, I will talk you through all the steps. You listen and do at the same time. The lessons are designed to improve ability and reduce effort in movement. The speed of an exercise should always be adjusted to your breathing rhythm. For the lesson, find a place where you can lie down comfortably and wear clothing that doesn't interfere with your movements and breathing. Also, take a rest whenever you want to. There will be plenty of rests in the lesson, but if you need more, please do. The lessons have been recorded live while teaching a class. This lesson is called Waking Up the Sternum, and it's a lesson that I've been kind of taught by Tiffany. So as you're resting on your back, just notice what your process of settling into your body is today. That can include what's not quite ready to settle, or parts lifted away from the floor, or maybe it's your mind more than your body. And you can rest with your legs long or bent. Now bring one arm long overhead on the floor. Kind of comfortable, so it doesn't have to be straight up, but it's kind of going on the floor towards the wall behind you, let's say. Like the top of your head is somewhere, and then the fingers point towards that wall. And the arm doesn't have to be totally straight. It doesn't have to be, it can be a little bit on a diagonal as well on the floor, as long as it's comfortable for a while. Kind of diagonal relationship to the opposite hip, let's say. So it could be a little bit wider away from your torso. And then have the leg that's on the side of that arm also long, and the opposite leg bent with the feet standing on the floor. Yeah, so the one side is all long leg, long arm overhead, and the other leg is bent at the knee and the foot standing on the floor. And very slowly start to press that standing foot into the floor a little bit, and see how this pressing of the foot can lift that side of the hip a little bit off the floor. And then let it go back down to the floor again. And repeat it a few times. Easy. And take your time to find where you want to have your foot and how much pressure feels good to use. And then just feel this kind rippling through you. So the pressing of the foot lifts the side of the hip. And then the weight shifts to the opposite side of the hip a little bit. Make it easy, comfortable. Don't need to go really high. And replace your foot a few times, like place it in one point and then maybe shift it to another position and see which one is most comfortable. And pause in this position and notice how you're breathing. And next time you press your foot into the floor to lift the hip, think of directing it to lengthen the long arm that you have overhead. And not that you actively do something with that arm, but that the trajectory of the movement is directed towards, in this diagonal path, towards the arm that's long overhead. As if the arm could get like a centimeter longer. It's a small movement. So you press the foot into the floor, that lifts the hip off the floor, and then somehow feel if you can direct that rippling all the way to the opposite shoulder and let it travel into the arm and see if it can get there. Maybe you have to move your arm a little bit or your foot a little bit. And you're exploring this movement. So notice what happens in your chest, your spine. Feel this slight turning. And notice if you want to do anything with your head and your neck to support the movement. For example, does it make a difference if the head rolls or if you look towards the arm or the hand that's up overhead? Or does it make a difference, again, where you place your foot? And does it make a difference if your belly is contracted or not? And if you're not sure, you can do it on purpose. And what's happening with your breathing? And let go of the movement. Bring your arm down alongside you slowly. And have your leg long, the other leg. And notice what you observe now. Now very lazily roll over to lie on the side where you had your arm and your leg long. So remember which side you had the arm and the leg long, and then roll onto that side. And you can put something under your head if it's more comfortable. And have your knees bent at, say, 90-degree angle with your knees somehow in front of your pelvis. So not too low, but more like perpendicular to your pelvis. And you have your top arm in front of you. You can have the hand resting on the other arm or just on the floor, depending on where the lower arm is. Just make sure it's comfortable. And now in this position, very slowly, lift your head to look over your shoulder, the shoulder that's close to the floor. So your face will turn toward the floor a little bit. You have to organize yourself and you turn yourself a little bit as to look over your shoulder, the shoulder that's close to the floor. And then you come back again. And repeat this a few times. And notice what happens. Where can you reduce the ambition to accomplish this task? Like it's a direction, so you don't have to get there. But as you're slowly trying to figure this movement out, what's happening with the rest of you? Where would you like to feel a little more ease in yourself as you're doing it now? Rest your head on the floor and just notice your breathing. You stay on your side, your head's resting on the floor, and now start to bring the attention to your hip, the side of the hip that's facing the ceiling. And start to make a little movement of that side of the hip a little bit forward, and then return to where you came from. And repeat this a few times. And notice that this movement also moves the top knee relative to the bottom knee. And the movement of the pelvis also travels through the spine. And then sense what else participates. Do you notice your ribs? Or how your contact with the floor changes as you bring the top side of your pelvis a little bit forward? And notice the feeling of your hand that's resting on the floor in front of you or on the other arm. As you shift your knee forward, how the weight travels a little bit into your hand, like it pours a little bit into that hand that's on the floor. Do you feel that? And rest on your side. And now organize yourself so that you have the hand resting on the floor and inhibit the movement of your shoulder. So don't let it move. Maybe you need to push a little bit with the hand or stabilize it in a different way, so like somehow that the shoulder doesn't really move. And now again, very slowly a few times, bring the top part of your hip a little bit forward and then bring it back to the beginning position again. And notice what's different if you inhibit your shoulder to move along. And then go back to the shoulder, let the shoulder move along. So you just have it move along as you bring the top part of your pelvis a little bit forward, and then you bring it back again, and feel how this weight pours into your hand again. And maybe you can even let your head roll, so the nose moves a little bit toward the floor as you bring the top side of your hip forward. Your shoulder rolls a little bit forward, even your head rolls a little bit. And let go of this movement and rest on your side. And now bring your attention to the shoulder that's facing the ceiling. And start to make a little movement forward with the shoulder and then back to the beginning position. And repeat this a few times and go slowly so you can feel that the initiation has changed. I mean, in a way, it's a similar movement, but the intention is bringing your attention to your shoulder now and feeling the possibility of sliding the shoulder blade over the ribs. And where can you soften in yourself so the movement can become smoother and lighter? And you can let your head roll a little if it wants to. And maybe the pelvis wants to come into the movement as well. But you initiate the movement from the shoulder. So it moves a little bit forward and then back to where you started. And rest on your side again. And just notice, how are you sensing yourself? Now slowly come back to the movement of looking over your shoulder, the shoulder that's close to the floor, on the floor, a few times, and notice what it's like now. And that if you have any more support in yourself to do this movement. Allow your shoulder and pelvis to move forward. And does that make it easier and more possible? It's almost as if you're rolling in the direction of your belly, but you're not fully rolling to your belly. It's just the beginning of that. And rest and pause on your side. Now, bring yourself in a somewhat twisted position, looking at the ceiling. So you roll a little bit towards your back. And if this is really uncomfortable for the knees, put something in between them. The knees stay on top of each other, but it's just that you roll, you're facing the ceiling and your torso rolls a little bit with. Your knees stay on the side. And now bring your top hand to your forehead with the palm. And the elbows out to the side. And the fingers are pointing away from the elbow. And I start to roll the head with the help of that hand a little bit to one side and then a little bit to the other side. And how is this being initiated by the intention to roll the head with the hand? So the neck is very passive. And the shoulder blade might move a little bit, and the spine, and the ribs, but it's all because of the hand that's moving the head. And do what's easy, what's comfortable. And let go of this. Stay with your face toward the ceiling. And bring the fingers of both of your hands to your sternum, this big bone in the middle in front of your chest. And just feel it for a bit, like how big is it? Where does it start? Up at the collarbones it starts, and then it goes kind of toward the middle of your torso, and then somehow there's a little hole, mostly. That's where it ends. And see if you can find a pair of ribs. I mean, they meet very close next to the sternum. They're like these little nudges there. Can you feel them? Almost close, like very close to your neck in a way. Very high up. So you have your collarbones, like these bones that go out to the side. They stick out at a lot of people. And then under that, that's already where the sternum starts. And there's already ribs there. Very delicate space. And then just with your fingers on either side of the sternum, see if you can just find one pair of ribs and kind of touch them quite close to the sternum bone. And now start to bring this pair of ribs a little bit in the direction that you're turned towards, as if you were going to roll a little bit more to your back. And then you come back again. It's a very, very small movement because the sternum doesn't move that much apart from the spine, but it can move a little bit. And you initiate it from these fingers that very, very, very softly move the ribs, and then also the sternum moves a little bit. And then you bring it back again. And you do it a few times with one pair of ribs, and then you move a pair of ribs down or up wherever you started. Feel the ribs, and then very, very softly with the pads of your fingers. You don't have to kind of like be hard. You just start to move this pair of ribs with the sternum in the middle a little bit further to your back. And then again, let them come back to the beginning position. And try a few different places or pairs of ribs in that sternum area. Be very soft with yourself. You can imagine you have the sternum in the front and the spine is behind. And in a way, what I just said also already is like you're differentiating a little the movement of the sternum from the movement of your spine. And slowly let it go. Finish what you're doing. And then let it go. And one more time, bring back your hand to your forehead, the same hand as you just had, with the fingers pointing away from the elbow and the elbow is wide. And very gently roll your head a few times to one side and then the other side and see if something changed. Or maybe notice that you have any different awareness of your spine or of your sternum in the front, the movement of your sternum. And let it go and roll to your side again and rest. And one more time, look over your shoulder, the shoulder that's on the floor. And this time notice the movement of your sternum. And then you bring it back to the floor again and repeat a few times to look over your shoulder. So you lift the head a little bit and you look over the shoulder that's on the floor. And notice the movement of your sternum and see if you can feel, as you look over your shoulder, the back of your head is going a little bit backwards and your sternum lifts a little. And this lifting of the sternum basically supports the head, the turning of the head. And let go of this movement, roll onto your back and rest. And notice, what do you observe and what do you sense? Is there any difference from the beginning? And is there any difference between one side and the other side? Notice your breathing. Now bring the same arm overhead as in the beginning of the lesson and the same knee bend and the foot pressing into the floor. And the other leg is long. And again, press a little into the foot that's standing on the floor and direct it to the opposite arm so it might lengthen a little bit that arm. And let your head do what it likes. You can look toward your hand and feel what happens in your torso, in your belly, in your sternum. And if you didn't involve your head, try it a few times. Like as you press the foot into the floor and the hip lifts and this movement is traveling through your body towards that opposite shoulder and arm. See at what moment does it make sense to look at this hand of the arm that's overhead on the floor. Somehow there's a natural moment for this head to kind of look up. And then what's happening, what's different in your belly, in your sternum, when you actually look at that hand above your head in a way? Is it different than what you've been doing so far? And what's the path from the floor? Pressing the foot in the floor, where you have your foot in this diagonal relationship to your arm. Is there any difference with this movement as when we began? And does it make a difference where you have your arm? And maybe you feel there's something impeding with this movement. It's like something in the way. And see if it's getting clear, this diagonal from the foot to the opposite hand. And let go and rest. And roll your head a little bit to one side and a little bit to the other side. And feel how far down is it connected through you. Is it just the head and the neck? Or do you feel it in your upper spine? Or maybe all the way to your pelvis? And let go of this rolling. Now bend your other leg and press that foot a little bit into the floor to lift the hip and bring it down again, and notice what it's like to do it on this side. And if you can't really feel the difference, then switch to the first side and press that foot into the floor a few times, and then come back to this side again. Now stay with this second leg bent, the second knee bent and the second foot on the floor. Bring the opposite arm on the floor overhead. Like make a kind of diagonal from the foot to the hand as much as possible. And play with directing the pushing of the foot into the floor to lift that side of the hip, and then all the way toward the opposite shoulder into the opposite arm. And sense how the movement through this diagonal is very different possibly than on the other side. And how is it different and where? Is it less clear? Does your head know something about this? Your sternum present or not? And you press the foot into the floor, and then you come back again with your pelvis on the floor, and then slowly you repeat it. So you press, you make the diagonal to the opposite arm, and then you let go again. And experiment with the placement of the foot and the placement of the arm that's overhead. And what's the timing? Like, how is the timing influencing the ease of the movement? And let go and rest on your back. Now roll onto the side where the arm and the leg were long. So it's the other side than what you have been doing so far. And again, support your head if you want to, if it's comfortable. Have your knees bent again at a kind of 90-degree angle in front of your hip. both knees on top of each other, resting on the floor. Kind of like a fetus position almost. And again, begin with looking over your shoulder, the shoulder that's on the floor. And then bring your head back again and see what it's like to do it on this side. How do you begin it? Slow it down even more. Notice, where do you begin? Do you begin with the head? With your eyes? What's the first thing that happens after the thought, I'm gonna move my head? And where does the movement then begin? Leave it and stay on your side. And now we will play with imagination. So we will not do the movements, but we will just imagine them and see how strong or how different this is. So this time we begin with the shoulder, and in your imagination, move the shoulder a little bit forward and back to the beginning position. And repeat this in your imagination. Can you make the movement of the shoulder smooth, sliding over the ribs? Let the whole arm be relaxed. And what would happen with your spine, your pelvis? And what would happen to the side you're resting on? And now let go of this. And now imagine moving the pelvis a little bit forward and back to the beginning position. And repeat this a few times. And spreading your attention to all the different little movements and parts that are also part of this. And your breath, the relation with your head. And now imagine the pelvis and the shoulder together, moving a little bit forward and back to the beginning position. And let go of this image. And now imagine you would take the shoulder and pelvis a little bit backward, so the face is toward the ceiling. And if it's really hard to imagine, you can actually roll you can roll a little bit to the back so your face is toward the ceiling, but you don't have to. And go ahead and then imagine bringing your forehead to your hand and rolling your head a little bit to one side and the other side. And see if you can reduce more effort and make the movement light in your imagination. And feel how the head's supported by the arm, the shoulder, and that it would move the spine. There's all this potential there to move. It's right there, but you're not doing it. And now let go of that image. And again, if you want to roll your head so you're looking toward the ceiling, you can. But if you're okay on your side, stay there. And now bring your hands to your sternum again, on the sides of your sternum. And you can do it in imagination, or you can really do it. And find a pair of ribs. And in your imagination, start to move this pair of ribs together with the sternum a little bit more in the direction of your back. And then back again, like not of your back, but in the direction that you are rolling towards. So you make it roll further a little bit, and then back again to the beginning position. and sense it into the tissue, and find that feeling of bone. And imagine you're sliding your sternum and then back again. And the sternum would move relative to the spine behind. And then imagine you get another pair of ribs, or you actually do find another pair of ribs with your fingers. And then again you move the sternum and the ribs a little bit. And then back again. And breathe freely. And picture what's easy about the movement. And let go of what's not so easy. Imagine the front of yourself moving a little independent from the spine. And let go of that imagination. Roll back to your side if you were kind of resting with your face toward the ceiling. So your face is now resting to the side as well. So you're all looking, your knees are pointing one direction and your face is pointing the same direction. So you're just in the fetus position again. And now go back to looking over the shoulder that's on the floor. Lift your head a little bit and keep yourself on the side. You feel you're turning. And is there any change in doing it this time compared to the time before? And then you bring your head back again and you rest it on the floor. And a few times, very slowly and lazily, look over your shoulder and then come back to lying on your side. Let go of this and just roll onto your back. And notice what you notice resting on your back. Now bring the second arm overhead, the second one that you kind of like were just working with, and bend the opposite leg. Have the foot standing on the floor. And start to push that foot a little bit into the floor as to lift the hip and direct it to lengthen the opposite arm, like 1 centimeter maybe crawling on the floor. And then let go again and repeat it a few times. And are there any echoes from the exploration on the side that are influencing this movement right now? Put everything down, your arm slowly down. Sometimes it's a bit intense to bring it down. And roll your head a little bit to the left and the right. And see how that feels now. And how far down your spine do you feel it? And how aware are you of your sternum and your collarbones and your breathing? And let go of this rolling of the head. And now very slowly, in your own time, roll to one side and then come up to sitting. And very slowly up to standing. Take all the time you need. And maybe you don't want to come all the way up to standing. That's totally fine. Feel what you need. Like if you don't need to stand, you don't stand. And whatever end position you find yourself in, notice what you notice in this position. As you stand or sit, just notice. Maybe look over one shoulder a little bit and look over the other shoulder. Maybe you want to walk a little. And this is the end of this lesson. Thank you for joining.